name's Hydo and welcome to the Pantheon, the show where we look at the top 5 cards for a given commander. Today we've got a political episode. We're looking at the brand new Elder Dragon, Shadrix Silverquill, weighing in at 5 mana, and this art is just phenomenal. It just looks so beautiful. That ink pouring everywhere just looks amazing. But anyway, the art isn't the reason we're here. It's politics. So, he's an Elder Dragon with flying and double strike. And, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. 1. Target player creates a 2/1 white and black Inkling token with flying. 2. Target player draws a card and loses 1 life. 3. Target player puts a 1/1 counter on each creature they control. So, if we want to make use of at least one of them for ourselves, we're going to have to give our opponent something else. I don't like things like this personally, but if you do, I've got a couple of suggestions that are really quite cool. And he's a 2/5, so the double strike, he's hitting for 4, and if we're putting counters on him, hitting for 6, so on and so forth. Can be really quite useful. But, you know, we're not just going to be friendly to our opponents. We're going to manipulate them. We're going to hurt them and make them suffer. Which is always good, isn't it? Coming in at number 5, we've got Campbell, or Cambal, Consul of Allocation. 3 mana for a 2/3. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life, and we gain 2 life. So, we are going to be giving things to our opponents, but we want something in return. They're going to be taking some damage, you know, we're going to gain some life. Just make it hard for them to kill us, you know. Hopefully, us giving things to them will dissuade them from attacking us. Or, you know, possibly we can prevent it altogether. A couple of other cards like this, Draneth Magistrate. These are all a bit more mean. It's a 2 mana 1/3 with your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hand. So they can't cast commanders, they can't cast anything from exile, from their graveyard. It really does cripple them, which, you know, they might get a bit more angry about. Painful Quandary, 5 mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player loses 5 life unless he or she discards a card. Again, incredibly cruel and can win the game, you know, if it goes long enough. Going to slowly drain our opponents of resources. Our commander might make them draw a card, but, you know, we're going to rip it from their hand. Finally, Liesa, Shroud of Dusk. 5 mana for a 5/5. The command tax thing does not matter. Flying, lifelink. Whenever a player casts a spell, they lose 2 life. Bit more fair, bit more symmetrical. Our opponents, you know, they can't really get angry at us for this one because we're losing it as well. Or at least that's the theory I'm working for. She does have lifelink, so she can gain back a bit of life. Which brings us on to number 4. This, a much more symmetrical effect. You know, let's let our opponents draw some cards. You know, just keep fueling them so they don't get angry. Howling Mine is a 2 mana artifact that says at the beginning of each player's draw step, if Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws an additional card. There are some synergies you could put in to tap this artifact, but it's too much effort, you know, in a deck that we're building around more enchantment themed. To go along with this, we've got Font of Mythos, which is a 4 mana artifact. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws 2 cards. So it's 2 Howling Mines slapped together and, you know, just mushed together. You know, cool stuff. Archon of Coronation is a slightly different take on this. 6 mana for a 5/5 with flying. When it's the battlefield, we become the Monarch. The Monarch is a token that can be passed around, and at the end of your turn, you draw a card. But if you're dealt combat damage, you give it to someone else. You know, this does incentivize people to attack us, but then if we can give it away, then our opponents will attack them instead of us, so it all works out. Archon also says, as long as you're the Monarch, damage does not cause you to lose life. Very, very powerful, cool effect. Temporary Truce is a really cool sorcery. 2 mana. Each player may draw up to 2 cards. For each card less than 2 that player draws, that player gains 2 life. So we might give them some life back, but most of the time people are going to take the card. So why don't we punish them for drawing cards. Smothering Tithe, 4 mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a colour's treasure artifact token that has sacrificed this artifact. Add 1 mana of any colour. Absolute staple in the format now. And this card will just generate so much ramp. And if we're just constantly forcing our opponents to draw, they're not going to be able to pay for all of it. Fate Unraveler is a 4 mana 3/4. Whenever an opponent draws a card, Fate Unraveler deals 1 damage to that player. So the more they draw, the more we're going to be hurting them. Finally, Arms Collector, 4 mana for a 3/4 with Flash. If an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, instead, you and that player each draw a card. So we're going to be taking their draws. So we're reducing the impact of anything that we're doing, really. You know, it's going to really benefit us. Brings us on to number 3. Sphere of Safety. So our opponents might see through our ruse. You know, we're being kind. You know, we're being nice. We're not really. And they might want to try and kill us. So, Sphere of Safety, a 5 mana enchantment, reads, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. I mentioned earlier, we're very much going to be focused on enchantments, and this is one of the best protective cards for us. Ghostly Prison, very similar effect. 3 mana, enchantment. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. However, they can still attack your planeswalkers without having to pay the 2, as this doesn't state it. The Sphere of Safety says it's if they're attacking your planeswalker, but Ghostly Prison doesn't. Don't fall into that. Then these final 2 are more interesting takes on this. You know, if people want to deal damage to us, we're going to get some benefit out of it. Darian, King of Kajeldor, is a 6 mana 3/3. Whenever you're dealt damage, you may create that many 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. So if people are swinging in, our army is just going to get absolutely massive. Then our commander, you know, could put a 1/1 counter on all of them. Whew, nice bit of synergy there. Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts, is a 7 mana 4/4 with vigilance and protection from creatures. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature, put a 1/1 white and black spirit creature with flying onto the battlefield. Again, works excellently. If they are going to deal us damage, we're going to take away their creature and get a big army for ourselves. Which brings us on to number 2. And the main crux of this deck is curses. We want to move curses around, make sure that our opponents have some bad things going on, and potentially kill them using them. Curse of Misfortune is a 5 mana aura curse. Enchant player. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may search your library for a curse card that doesn't have the same name as a curse attached to an enchanted player. Put that card onto the battlefield attached to that player, then shuffle your library. So, what other curses are we going to be running? We'll leave Bitterheart Witch, because she isn't a curse, but she's very good in this deck. Curse of Disturbance is a 3 mana curse. Whenever an enchanted player is attacked, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. So this really incentivizes some people to attack people other than them, because they'll get a 2/2, but then we also get a 2/2, slowly building up our army. This is the sort of politics card I like. It dissuades people, but it also benefits us a lot. Very good. Curse of Fool's Wisdom is a 6 mana curse with enchant player. Whenever enchanted player draws a card, they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. So very much on the theme before. If we're forcing our opponents to draw loads of cards, we want to be hurting them. It also has Madness. So Madness means if you would discard this card, you can pay 4 mana to cast it instead. Then Bitterheart Witch is a 5 mana 1/2 with Death Touch. When it dies, you may search your library for a curse, put it onto the battlefield attached to target player, and then shuffle your library. So, obviously, we can search for the Curse of Misfortunes, but there's a couple of other big curses that we can choose for. Overwhelming Splendor is an 8 mana curse. Enchant player. Creatures enchanted player controls lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. Enchanted player can't activate abilities that aren't mana abilities or loyalty abilities. This is just going to cripple one of our opponents. It's just insane how much damage this can do. Like, nothing works, nothing triggers, no enter the battlefields, nothing. It's fantastic. Then Curse of Thirst is a 5 mana curse. At the beginning of enchanted player's upkeep, Curse to Thirst deals damage to that player equal to the number of curses attached to him or her. So this is how we're going to kill our opponents. Put a bunch of curses on them and then ping them each upkeep, or at least that's the plan. Cruel Reality is another great 7-mana curse that is great, really good if we're cheating it out. At the beginning of Enchanted player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If that player can't, he or she loses 5 life. Backbreaking just really picks away at our opponents and can just ping them for lethal damage. Which brings us on to number 1. Now, curses are pretty fragile, and when a player loses to them, they all just drop off. They just cease to exist or fall into oblivion. So, Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist, is a great card for this deck. 3 mana 2/2. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may attach any number of auras and equipment you control to target permanent or player. So, we've got a bunch of curses over there. Okay, cool. But they're about to die. Let's shift them over to someone else and then focus them down. We can move our targets, and then hopefully our opponents, that aren't being targeted will start going after them as well. Really, really cool card. The partner ability obviously doesn't matter here. But we are playing with enchantments, and these cards work incredibly well, especially if we're just putting them into play using all of our sort of cheat effects. Doomweight Giant is a 5 mana 4/6, I think it is. Constellation, which means whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield. When it enters the battlefield under your control, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn. So, if we have Overwhelming Splendor on the field and, everything's a 1/1 for one player, simply an enchantment coming in will wipe the board. Really, really cool. Then Archon of Sun's Grace and Ajani's Chosen are essentially the same creature. Whenever enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying for Archon, and a 2/2 white cat creature for Ajani's Chosen. Really bolsters our army every time an enchantment enters the field. Finally, a couple of bits of protection here. Greater Auramancy. 2 mana for an enchantment. Other enchantments you control have Shroud. Enchanted creatures you control have Shroud. So, protect all of our auras, and if we choose to sort of enchant our Shadrix, as he does have double strike and can get in for some big damage, this can really protect him and everything else. Starfield of Nyx is a really nice thing. People are going to remove our auras, and this is a great way of getting them back. 5 mana. At the beginning of upkeep, you may return target enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. We can rebuy any one of our auras that gets blown up. Really, really, really nice. But then, there's even more to it. As long as you control 5 or more enchantments, each other non-aura enchantment you control is a creature in addition to its other types, and has base power and toughness, each equal to its convert mana cost. This, I at first thought was a negative, because the auras, all our curses don't become animated, but I just think it's a lot more important that we can just keep rebuying them turn on turn, and then any other incidental enchantments that we have can swing in for big damage. Really, really great card, and it's a nice little engine to have in the deck. Rise to Glory is a 5 mana sorcery. Choose one or both. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Return target aura card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, ideal situation. This can reanimate a Doomweight Giant and then one of our aura curses. Really, really powerful. Really, really cool card. And those are my top 5 cards for this brand new commander. He's quite cool. Double strike's nice, and the politics can be a bit fun. You can try and manipulate some people. If you've got any suggestions for the deck, please do tell me. I'd love to hear them, and thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, and goodbye.